Move on to 8B. Get the city clerk.
Item 8B, disposition of Mountain View Mobile Home Park. And we have 6 requests to speak.
And the 2 I have here, they were in 8A. Okay. We'll go ahead with the staff report then.
Good evening, Mayor and Councils. Jim Kemper, Housing and Economic Development. For your consideration this evening in this report are 2 recommendations regarding the city-owned Mountain View Mobile Home Park. One recommendation involves granting a temporary use exemption to 8 households whose mobile homes encroach upon 11 adjacent and vacant spaces. This approach would facilitate the proposed transition of the property to non-city ownership rather than delaying the transition while we attempt to resolve the encroachment issues. The other recommendation seeks council authorization to solicit proposals from housing organizations to own and operate the property while maintaining long-term affordability. The recommendations respond to previous City Council direction to explore the disposition of city-owned residential rental properties that are managed by the Housing Division. Staff believes that owning and operating residential rental property is best suited to private housing organizations who can focus on operating affordable housing and which are experienced and equipped to respond to the daily needs of tenants and property management issues. Finally, this strategy would allow city staff to focus on its core competency, which is increasing affordable housing opportunities through funding programs and policy implementation. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilor Hemmerich has a question.
So this is the map of the new lot lines, is that correct?
No,
or the old lot lines, I should say.
The intent of this map was just generally to show that of where the location of the 8 households are, without any further detail to, not shame the household, but just to show the council if they wanted some visual idea of where the issue is in the park. It's
right, but these are the 11 lots that are being grandfathered in to sort of become, at least until the person who lives in the existing mobile home moves and I'll talk about this later, or otherwise disposes.
The blue is where... The blue are the occupied 8 households that, based on where their mobile homes are located, that they essentially encroach on 11 other red marked rectangles that are currently vacant.
And by encroach, you mean that they are within 3 feet of the line?
Or in some cases, they might be over it, but effectively it renders those other sites unusable. Because
you don't have the requisite 6-foot setback?
Because they are already very small spaces, and which some of them will allow only, for example, a 12-foot wide mobile home to get the 4-foot setback. So you would have to build a 9-foot wide mobile home, and something that we think is probably not a good idea.
Okay, and this is the configuration. When we took over the park, we we created the lots. Is that right? They weren't really there then?
Correct. There were no established lot lines when the city took ownership. So this is the representing since lot lines have been established and a roadway carved through a portion of the park to allow the fire service vehicles to access.
And we are proposing that the red outlined lots remain part of the lot that the adjacent home is on until something else happens. And that's what I wanted to ask you. So one thing would be if the person leaves the park, right? If the resident in the home leaves the park, is that right?
Correct. The idea is to allow the exemption just for that household, because in some cases the household may argue they didn't move anything, the kind of border moved on them, if you will. But we perceive it as a kind of tenant protection thing. But yes, but nobody else. There's no other right to anybody else to continue that encroachment.
But there I think is some concern about what happens if they apply for some different kind of permit or something if they keep the existing home. What I'm asking you is, what short of swapping out whatever is on the blue site would trigger a change in the lots that you're grandfathering in?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Well, so I assume if they brought in a new mobile home or and put it on the lot, that would trigger a change, because then you have an opportunity to adjust.
And they would be required to conform to city current rules, and so that would actually solve the problem if they were to purchase new units.
But that's what I'm getting at. Short of replacing the existing residence on the lot, what would trigger the city rules that would change the lot lines?
There isn't anything that would change the lot lines. I guess what we were.
You just said putting a new mobile home on it would trigger the rules.
No, I'm sorry. Then I misspoke. What I'm saying is that the current household, the mobile homes on the units, have no space to add on to their units or anything like that. But were they to replace it with a new home, that new home would be right-sized and end up no longer encroaching on the adjacent site, so that adjacent site would now be freed up for a new affordable housing opportunity. For
Okay, and I think that people are concerned that any kind of permits they apply for or anything that they do with the city would trigger a readjustment of the lot line, and I'm trying to get you to say that it won't.
Correct. It will not. That's correct.
Right, that's right.
Okay, correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I missed
Good,
that.
that's what I want to understand. Thank you.
I apologize.
That's okay.
No other questions? We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. And I have Oscar de la Torre, but I don't see him here, so we'll hold it. And then Ellen, if you want to come up, and I guess Catherine is donating her time. Oh, okay, they wrote it the same way. So you get 4 minutes. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
According to the way I read it, and it could be interpreted that way, irrespective of what's said tonight, you go for a permit and they can trigger it. While I support the item with regard to selling the park, I have serious concerns about the portion related to the permit issue. This item states that a homeowner who requires a permit for maintenance or repairs may lose their space and home in the park if they are one of the 8 owners with, and let me repeat that, owners with a lot line exemption. The city created the violation. It did not exist until the city built it into the park and around these people. All mobile homes on a routine basis require maintenance and repairs that go beyond a regular house. They're simple, but they go beyond just a regular house, and you require a permit from Building and Safety. One of the new units wanted awnings, and he had to go down to Building and Safety and try to get a permit to put awnings on. Simple thing like that. The city created the lot lines which placed the 8 homes in owners in eviction. In the handout provided, the Health and Safety Code 1850, 18610, 18610-5, 18612, the very last section, point F, is the one I'm most interested in. No lot line shall be created, moved, shifted, or altered if the lot line creation or change will place a unit or accessory building or structure in violation of any provision of this chapter or in any other applicable provision of the law that goes beyond just what's this chapter. The owner can be evicted for failing to complete the maintenance with this condition. With this condition, the owner can be evicted from the space and unit if they require a permit to do the repairs. Either way, it's a guaranteed loss of space and home for a homeowner, and a lot and a total gift to the park who actually built the violation, because they get the space, they get to move in a new unit, and they get rid of an owner. Would the city evict the owner from the unit or simply force them to become the renters in one of the new units? Either the way, the city has lost one of the few lowest income homeowners left in Santa Monica. From my perspective, and probably from anyone who actually owns a home, this would not be a choice. It would be extortion and theft instead. So I would say today, just as a point, the new unit is the one encroaching, not the old one. It was created that way.
Thank
And it
you.
shouldn't have been. It was a violation to begin with.
Guess before you come up, let me have, I think it's Ken is coming up. And Ken, you have some time donated to you by Ward, and I think it's in the back,
My
right?
wife is right there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Ken Ward, I live in Mountain View, and first of all, I would like to say I'm in favor of removing the city as owners. This will give us a full Title 25 use, and we can go to the city attorney's office, Consumer Affairs. That's one thing that no one ever really brings up. Right now, we can't go to city attorney, and we don't have full title use. We will also get back our clubhouse or commuting room, which was part of the upgrade that the city did back in 2006, which the managers has taken over as their office. So that is going to be great. That's why we want the city to go and sell it. And I am one of the owners that has 2 lots, I guess they go and say, which back when this was approved by city council saying that they're going to go and give the new construction, I have never given my written permission, which under state law, I was supposed to. They were supposed to go on to each person and say, look, we're going to do this. As it stands now, I'm going to lose half of my space, as you see. It's down there along X Road, the bottom, the first one. So that means when I get anything new for my wife and myself, we're going to lose half that space. So now the difficulty is I've been talking to the manufacturer. Because of the problems that the city has on their units they bought, they won't do any business with me. I've gone to another person, another sales office. They will go and do something, but they need the city's word that they can do it, because they're not going to go and build something. What I would need is like a 2-story, because you're losing half of my space to go and have the same amount of what I had. So, I mean, this is really getting into 2 points. One is, yes, I agree with the city, sell it to a nonprofit, sell it to someone that's going to run it. There's many places would take over. We do need a lot of upgrades there. But then on the lot line issue, the 8 people will get basically screwed, because, like I say, for myself and my wife, we're going to lose half our space. And what benefits are we going to get? Yes, you can go to rent control and ask for a decrease, but is that really fair? I mean, is that really using what rent control is for? I mean, yes, it is in a way, but to go and live there to lose half of what you have, is that really fair? Again, there should be some type of negotiation, maybe helping us to get new homes like they did before. When the city had their offer, they were giving a home that was only worth $2,500. They gave them $30,000, $20,000. And people made out like bandits. Now they're living there as renters because they sold their home. Myself, I don't want to do that. I have always said here, it's not right to make a profit off the city. 29 years I was an employee. I have always stood for that point. You don't make profit off the city. This is the community. It should not be right. And anyone, any business, I think we all should play fair. Thank you.
There's a question from Councilman Hermers.
So you say you're losing half your lot.
Yes.
Can you tell us I'm having trouble picturing
Okay,
it.
on the bottom,
Hold
the
on.
first blue and red, you see.
This one?
Yes, that one. And that's really not the shape of it, because if you go back in February 6th, there was a DR by Bob Moncrief, who did plot lines back then, who verified that there was plot lines.
In 2006, right?
Yes,
I saw
yeah.
that in front of the Planning Commission. So let me ask you this, though. So I assume your home is at least primarily on the blue lot here.
It's on both.
So it's across both of them?
Yes.
And what's being taken away from you? What do you say you're losing half?
When we get a new home, we will lose the red. And so we will only be in the blue.
Because you own your home
Yes.
and you want to replace it.
Yes. And the only way to replace it, to go and have something equivalent, would be a two-story, which now has been approved by City Council and everyone. And even the owners agreed that, yes, they have, because their homes that they brought in, they were in violation of their own rules and regulations. And I'm willing to go and do that, and understanding in the future, but right now the company that builds the homes, they're not very interested in it because the city owns it.
Okay, thank you
Okay, thank
for
you.
explaining that to me.
Okay, Gus, come on up.
I'm guest tonight. Hi, my name is Chris McLeod. I live at Mountain View Mobile Home Park. And I'm the chair of the Pico Neighborhood Association at the moment, and we sent you guys a letter on this issue, so I'm just speaking as myself tonight. Okay, please disregard staff's request for 8 grandfathered in spaces until the 8 families' residents have had disclosure, i.e., do they lose their previous exemptions grandfathered in previously on tenants and their spaces? What is too much maintenance and how are they affected by it? All these questions and more. The most important document you have been given tonight from staff tonight is the rent control documents, which shows 92 tenancies at Mountain View. Where are all those tenants now? Municipal Code 8.08 carries the Health and Safety Code in Division 13, which requires staff to have acquired signatures from the residents in order to grandfather them in or to make changes. This has not happened, and it's in the Municipal Code. Mountain View Mobile Home Park is an amazing opportunity to create something great and very different and diverse in Santa Monica's housing stock, but it hasn't turned out that way. In my opinion, narrowing of the streets from 22 feet down to 15 feet, forcing tenants to park in their neighbors' lots at the moment is a more important issue to me that should be corrected before the sale of the park. The Tenants Association writes to the city every year requesting tenant ownership of the park, at least once every year and sometimes twice. Okay, I have a rent control report here from 2013. They have tried and done a really good job at trying to nail down some of the problems, like what you've seen there for the spaces. But basically, the exemption that was gifted to the city by rent control required absolutely zero changes to any occupied spaces. And I'll give this to the clerk because you guys should read this. You'll like it.
Thank you. That closes the public hearing. The item is now before us. Councilor Hemmerich.
Well, I understand the concern of the park residents with respect to losing what they now have. And I also hear the park residents saying that they want to have the park sold. I think that, first of all, with respect to the lot lines, it looks to me, and I looked at the history, were drawn in 2006. It went before the Planning Commission. And And so they were drawn, but at that time people were grandfathered in with what I think we're sort of looking at with the red and blue combined up on this map. And the concern that I have about the grandfathering is what would trigger trigger the smaller lot lines and not leave them in the grandfathered lot lines. If what we're saying is that any family currently residing in one of these grandfathered properties gets to keep the lot lines we're grandfathering in, I think that might be a good resolution of this until they leave the park. And I wonder, I understood that to be what Mr. Kemper said, but
I want to clarify. I think essentially what we're saying is we're not saying somebody has an existing tenant of 8 has the right to necessarily use the entire lot that's adjacent to it. What we're saying is they're using 2 rent-controlled spaces and they're only being charged for 1, and so we want a direction from the city council about that issue, and or at least this temporary use exemption issue. And the other issue is that it won't change their lot line. I don't know whether way to say it. It's about saying this is the use, this is where their home sits now, and we don't suggest they move it, but we suggest that that's not a right that goes to a next occupier of the site.
To the subsequent, to a subsequent owner. But if you're a homeowner, right? I mean, and we all, I think, understand that the issue with these mobile home parks is that they are a hybrid of ownership. They own their homes, right? And they're entitled to sell them when they leave. And so if Mr. Ward, thank you very much. If Mr. Ward wants to buy another home and put it on this site where his current home is located, and these lot lines are grandfathered in for him, and then he sells the home, then what happens to the next person?
Well, I think Mr. Ward was correct describing what the staff has explained before, is that currently he is occupying 2 spaces of the lots created by the 2 rent-controlled spaces, but that it is a staff's position that were he want to buy a new home, that he should occupy 1 space rather than 2.
And so I hear you saying that, but 29 years ago, when he bought that mobile home that encroached on the next space, right?
It's a little more complicated than that. That there was not a road. I don't know the best way to show, but his and Ken will confirm, his unit before this road was established to allow the emergency vehicle access. His unit was like this, and in creating that road that all the fire safety people thought were essential to protect all the residents, the only reasonable thing was to do was to turn his unit and occupy 2 spaces.
Well,
That didn't happen.
excuse.
I'm sorry for speaking out of turn, but
Yeah. So, and you can't. But so, regardless, right? For 29 years, he's owned a unit in this park, occupying a certain, whether his unit was turned sideways or otherwise by what we did, right? He's owned a unit that takes up, at a minimum, these 2 spaces right now.
Correct.
So my question for you is, and he owns it, I don't know how many of these other units are ownership units?
All of the 8 blue ones are ownership units.
And all of them are ownership units?
All of the ownership units.
And let me ask you something else. So in terms of disposing of the park, are we going to be able to retain a right to reacquire this? I saw that you put that in the staff report, and I think that's a really important component. As we've seen in other kinds of affordable housing, whether it stays a mobile home park or whether we, can otherwise, look, the city should not be getting rid of any land that it owns. We keep talking about land banking, and this is an example of retaining the land regardless of who's running the park after this, whether it's an option to repurchase at the end of a certain term or whatever. Is it our intention to do that?
Yes, it's our intention to put that in the request for proposals so the proposers know that that would be part of what they're getting involved in if they're making a proposal to own and operate the park.
And do we have any sense if anybody would be interested in the park in its current configuration and condition?
We have heard from various entities who are interested in purchasing the park. Until the RFP goes out, I guess we will not know for sure who.
And do you have any ideas for solving this issue of people who have owned these homes for 29 years and and have been maybe moved or, otherwise, but they own their homes, these 8 people?
Correct. And that's why we felt this was kind of a homeowner protection recommendation, that saying they're there. In an analogous way, I think the council has dealt with, let's say, a single-family home who has a 2-foot side yard setback, but the new rules are 5-yard. I think the city's position would be, okay, we'll let sleeping dogs lie, but if you submit a permit to add a second story to your home now we're, it's that kind of issue. Now maybe we either need to.
Well, I think our standard for that is substantial remodel, which is more than 50% or something. I mean, we just did this in this. I mean, it's a. It has to be a pretty big thing, and I understand their fear that they're going to go in for a new awning or something, and they're going to have to. Change the location or change the lot line. And particularly with somebody like Mr. Ward, that lot can't be used as long as his home is within 3 feet, because you need the 6-foot setback. You need 3 feet on either side of the lot line. I just did this in a case, right? So you need 6 feet between the 2 homes.
Correct, and I believe one option is this notion of having a 2-story, so you end up on a single on one lot.
But my question is, would a single lot even accommodate it?
I think what might help clarify things as well is these, as you know, these lot lines were drawn by the Planning Commission. This issue is ultimately a regulatory issue, not an issue in our proprietary role. So if I go down and try to get a permit, one of the things that the city as a regulator is going to look at is where the lot lines. So although we're taking this to you in your proprietary role, this is actually a regulatory issue, and we're anticipating that in our proprietary role we'll be able to say to the future owner that this is being grandfathered so that they're not pushing the issue.
So we can do that. That's what I'm asking. I mean, are we going to have the...
So we absolutely, what we're proposing is that the RFP would be very clear that all 8 of those households are grandparented as long as they stay. But what we're not proposing is that we will do away with all the city's regulatory rules that say you've got to comply with side yard setbacks and those types of elements. And
with respect to someone, whoa, Andy, where are you going? so with respect to somebody like Mr. Ward, right? If he wanted to do his double, his 2-story, would it even fit in that blue area?
I haven't seen the plan, so I can't tell you. But I think that is something that through the permit process would be evaluated. Does it meet the required side yard setbacks, et cetera?
And finally, I did take a look because I did see, as I was looking for Mountain View, that we are exempt from HCD supervision. If we sold to a nonprofit, they would be under HCD again. Would we lose
That's my understanding, yes.
So, but we're allowed to regulate it, I think, as long as we choose to do it. HCD allows localities to assume the regulation. Is that something we would do?
I believe that's if it's owned by the locality.
No, I'm just asking this because we might exercise our discretion a different way than HCD does, because I know they do the 3-foot rule very rigidly.
I don't know the exact answer, but there is an issue about whether a city can take it over, and there's another issue about whether the city says we don't want this, and the state, and we could look into the particulars of what that is.
I'm just concerned about the ultimate impact on the people living there. That's all. Thank you.
Councilor McEwen.
Well, I was waiting to suggest a solution. Let's see if this is possible. Currently, the staff report recommends that those who are on those 8 lots lose their rights if they do a major alteration to the home or terminate their tenancy. What if we said they lose the rights if they terminate their tenancy? We allow them to do major alterations to the house, the home, as long as it's on the same footprint it's on now. Would staff have a problem with doing it that way?
I don't know that we.
I think the challenge you're going to have is you've still got the regulatory issue. So the planning department's going to look at it and say, wait, you're building a new home, but it doesn't comply with the setback and other requirements. So I don't know how we do that in our wearing our proprietary hat.
Well, if all we said tonight was that, yeah, if you terminate your tenancy at the mobile home park, those lot lines go to what they were hoped to have been instead of what they are in practice. I guess in a way we're kicking the can down the road, but it's if someone like Mr. Ward then wants to make an application for.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do that. It's sort of leaving it up to the regulators to determine what's legal. But you're saying for our intention, it's grandparents.
Because that would clarify it in a way that would allow us then to hopefully find someone to manage the park who will know what the rules are. And it may be that of all the 8 people who own those blue lots right now, Mr. Ward's the only one who really wants to rebuild on the site. The others may just be happy to live there the rest of their lives, which would terminate their tenancy. I'm assuming that
Sounds like
tenancy is terminated upon death of the tenant.
Our city attorney wants to weigh in here.
It's not clear to me that you're on the agenda at the moment.
Okay.
And so maybe what you could do is conclude by giving a direction to staff, which you can always do, and you could vote on the 2 items that are clearly on the agenda tonight.
I'll move the staff recommendation with a direction to staff to investigate the possibility of allowing someone to rebuild on the site as long as they use the same footprint within their tenancy. And of course, if they leave the park, that's the end of their tenancy.
We had a second already? Yeah, Councilor Davis, I think, second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I guess we can go ahead and get a roll call vote.
Councilmember McKeown?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Winter?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor?
Yes.
Mayor Vasquez?
Yes, so that's unanimous of those present, and with the little direction added as well. And we can move on to 13A.